Would you have your own son circumcised? I personally, this is a very difficult question. There's pros and cons to both of it, but I would say, hey, what's up? This is King Elizabeth here. I am about to be 30 in a couple of weeks, actually, so send me some good vibes for sure. Happy birthday! From Ohio, which is actually going to be a big kind of reference for me in this upcoming discussion, but I currently live in LA. The first sort of topic that we're going to go over is male circumcision. So I honestly have, I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, probably about a 4 coming into this podcast discussion here. But now, after doing a little bit of research and some information, discovering, I would like to say I probably know closer to a 6 and maybe a 7 if I'm being generous. Yes, I have seen both a circumcised and uncircumcised penis, and honestly, what I have come to recognize is it really varies based on culture, based on religion, based on medical beliefs and things, as they say. I think those are the primary factors that there are for having circumcisions and things like that. And I think since I was raised in the Midwest in Ohio, there was quite a collective of where I was living, Christians, but also Jewish community. And so I learned a lot from my friends when I was in elementary school and things like that about their traditions and things like that, because I don't know, I guess I always inquired because I was raised Catholic. I was named after a nun, and there was a lot of connection there in my life. So I always had questions on differences, and that was one of those things. And so I found it very interesting, the whole bris aspect of it and everything, and also it does correlate with Islamic religions as well. So it's very interesting how it has that sort of background. I also came to discover that in some African cultures as well, they do circumcision there too. I think in America, it feels as though it's very common to see circumcised more than not. But, you know, me personally, you know, I was raised Catholic. I practice Hinduism now. Both of those religions and cultural beliefs, the areas that I resided as well, definitely did not have a particular stance on it. I think that one thing that we do recognize in both cultures and religions is that it does desensitize the physical interactions that we have with, you know, sexual intimacy. You know, there are a lot of differences between that. You know, when it comes to the Jewish household and how early they do circumcisions versus, you know, beliefs where it's not really specific. But once again, as I was saying, you know, I really do think that it's just today I almost feel as if there's kind of like a pressure or judgment if you're not, which is very interesting. I do know males do it later in life. For instance, if they are transitioning, you know, into a different religious belief or something like that, they make the decision, or a partner, you know, if a partner prefers someone circumcised, then they would have a discussion about that, you know, potentially before marriage or whatever time, you know, everybody's different, right? There's definitely some of those cases, but I know that the majority of the time it's when they're younger, especially like as a baby and things like that, when you're, you know, in the hospital primarily. So I do think that Americans circumcise because of presentation, if you will. I don't really understand personally. I mean, I think, you know, I am very non-judgmental in a lot of ways. I've come to realize how superficial the modern world is, and I think there is some peer pressuring when it comes to not doing that. You know, there's a medical background as well, saying that helps prevent, I think it was sexually transmitted infections and things like that. It said it was also good for medical reasons as to why people do it too. So I think, considering the two factors of there's definitely some peer pressure there on the physical aspect, appearance, and also the medical background of it that we have discovered today, I think that is definitely leaned more as to why Americans do that as often as they do. I definitely have a neutral opinion on that. You know, I don't really have a particular stance. I think, you know, it should be respected, your culture, your religion, where you come from, who you are. I think that is what's most important. And, you know, like I said, I definitely don't have a particular preference here. So I know that it's very interesting that within 3 dates, women ask that question. I find that very interesting. I did just recently discover, which is why my scale went up a little bit, I did not know what FGM is, and that is female genital mutilation. And I researched and discovered that it is mostly found in Eastern cultures and religions. It's not very often in the Western world, but it is mostly found in the East. And it's been something to sit with for sure. You know, if it's comparable to circumcision, because essentially female genital mutilation is sewing up like the labia and clitoris. Like, holy crap, you know? Like, most of the time they're done at a younger age, you know? So, I mean, I think that's kind of their viewpoint on it, but I mean, that's like a really hard would you rather, if you know what I mean. Would you rather have a knife taken to the tip of you, or would you rather be sewn together? Like, I personally have a fear of needles. So if that answers my question there on what I would do, honestly, I just say they are both equally, you know, painful sounding. I think, you know, it definitely is based on religious and cultural backgrounds for the most part. So I know that there is circumcision in my side of the family because of those medical reasons. I didn't necessarily have to ask, because I know from religion and I know from medical reasons and backgrounds. I come from a lot of healers and nurses and different things like that, so I do recognize that, let me see here, I do recognize the medical purposes and things, and the importance of the lack of judgment between whether someone has that done or whether someone hasn't had that done. The last thing, would you have your own son circumcised? I personally have so many creations as King Elizabeth that I want to be my children, to where this is a very difficult question. It's really hard to say. It's like a scale. There's pros and cons to both of it. I guess due to my background, I would say yes, and definitely at birth. So once again, this is King Elizabeth, and I am a rock musician, a model, actress, and a writer, writing comic books. So hope to hear from you soon. Bye.